Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Marie Holiday, and today is Tuesday, November the 3rd, 2020. And before I get started, I just want to thank all my viewers and my subscribers and potential subscribers for viewing my channel, supporting my channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So with that being said, let's get down to the next lecture. The focus of this topic is I'm going to talk about 5 types of thinking distortions that everybody on the planet use. I'm going to talk about 5 types of thinking distortions and addiction. So I want to make it clear, we all use thinking distortions, but when a person has an alcohol or drug problem or gambling addiction, their thinking distortions are more pronounced. So I just want to put that out there. And before I talk about the 5 types of thinking distortions, you first got to know what I mean by thinking distortions. And let me break it down to you when I'm talking about thinking distortions. Thinking distortions that we all use are the type of thoughts that can lead to destructive or self-destructive behavior. So thinking distortions are thoughts that can lead to destructive and self-destructive behavior with anybody. I'm here to tell you. And it also ties into what the reason why thinking distortions are more pronounced and more powerful with an alcoholic or drug addict or gambling addict. It ties into one of my other video uploads when I talked about psychological dependency, and what that means is it's a form of mental obsession. You're talking about mental now. That just like thinking distortions is mental, psychological dependency, mental obsession is mental. So view that prior video. That's your homework assignment. View that prior video on, I believe it's titled, "What is Psychological Dependency?" You really need to listen to that to have understanding on the direction I'm going with educating the world on thinking distortions, how we all use thinking distortions, but it's just more pronounced in its extreme with an alcohol or drug addict. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about five different types of thinking distortion. But I'm going to specifically put emphasis on how these 5 types of distortion is more pronounced with an alcoholic or drug addict or gambling addict. But make no mistake, we all use thinking distortions. Now, in number 1 is extreme thinking. I'm going to explain all of them. Number 1, extreme thinking. Number 2, personalization. Number 3, jumping to conclusions. Number 4, selective focus. And number 5, magnification or minimization. Those are 5 different types of thinking distortion that we all use, but they're more severe with the addict. So let me break this thing down to you when I mean extreme thinking. And as you listen to this, ask yourself, have you ever used any one of these distortions at any point in your life? Rather you are an alcoholic or addict or not, or a gambling addict. Just ask yourself this. When I say extreme thinking, and I've seen this in many people I met who ain't even addicted to drugs, alcohol, or gambling. Extreme thinking, a good example of that is black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking. Everything is viewed as either one extreme or the other. There's no middle ground. That's a real good example of a description of extreme thinking. You know, a person may have gotten arrested and got a crime or got a record. So an example, I'm just thinking of something off the top of my head. The example of extreme thinking or all or nothing thinking, the person will tell themselves, oh, now since I got this record, I was arrested 5 years ago for shoplifting, or 30 years ago for shoplifting, nobody on the planet will hire me. So that's a good example of all or nothing thinking. And you got some people really do think like that. So that's the first type of thinking distortion. Number two that we see with people who are substance abusers or drug addicts or gambling addicts, with their thinking distortion is more pronounced compared to the general population. Personalization, number two. Personalization. And a good description of what personalization means is everything that happens around you. Everything that happens around you is always about you. Make all events somehow related to your life, even when there is no real connection, is a good example of personalization. I've met people like that. I mean, you can be talking to them about anything, any event. They're going to connect what you're saying to their life. Yeah, I done this. I've been there. That's a good example. It's all about you. It's all about you. Everything that happens around you is always about you. You make all events somehow related to your life, even when there's no real connection. That's a good example of personalization, which is a thinking distortion, which is a thought distortion. Thought distortion number three. Jumping to conclusions. I've seen people do this all the time. Jumping to conclusions. Basically, what jumping to conclusions is making a snap decision with little or no evidence or information. That's a good example of jumping to conclusions. For example, a person may walk into a room, in a break room, or walk into a room or observe two individuals just talking, and that person may immediately jump to conclusions. Oh, they talking about me. They ain't got no business talking about me, with having very little evidence that they even thinking about you. That's just an example of jumping to conclusions. I met people like that, and that's another example of a thought distortion. Number four, selected focus. Selected focus. What that means is the person pick and choose certain parts of an event or a situation and only focus only on those that they want to talk about. They omit all other parts of that event or situation. So they pick and choose certain parts of an event or situation and focus only on those that they want to talk about, and they omit the important parts of the event or situation. That's a good example of selected focus. And to give you another example of that, when someone is using selected focus, say if they got a situation going on or event going on, something that they may have done that they weren't supposed to do, or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that family member may say, "Can you explain to me what happened? Can you describe what was going on? What were you doing there? How did you end up getting arrested?" That person will tell you everything that they want you to hear, but they're going to leave out the part that really got them in trouble. That, for example, if they got arrested, they're going to leave out the part that they were also not just driving, but drinking and driving. Not just driving, but got drugs in the car. They'll leave that part out. And they'll only present the part about, "I don't know why the police officer stopped me. I had my driver's license. I had my registration." But what they ain't telling you, that they also got a DWI. So that's a good example of selected focus. The person pick and choose certain parts of an event or situation. And number five, thought distortion number five, magnification and minimization. And what happens with this, if I was to describe this, magnification and minimization, the person take an event or situation and blow it all out of proportion. Or they'll play down the event, impact, or significance. That is usually done to explain or justify their actions or inactions and to excuse the results of their behavior. They can take something very small and blow it out of proportion. They may just have had a disagreement with a family member or a significant other and just blow that little verbal disagreement way out of proportion. The arguing begins to escalate. Then the verbal arguments escalate to physical violence. Then it escalate to damaging property in the house. Then it escalate to getting arrested. That's a good example of magnification. A good example of when someone minimizes something. Say, for example, if they may got arrested for drinking and driving, in and out of jail multiple times in their life, and each time they get DWIs, and each time they go to jail, they minimize. Well, oh, the police officer just picking on me. Oh, I wasn't really drinking that much. I wasn't drunk. So they're going to minimize the severity of the problem. And so those are the 5 different types of thinking distortions. Everybody on the planet uses thinking distortions, but if you're addicted to alcohol or drugs or gambling addiction, your thinking distortions are just more extreme. So with that being said, audience, I hope you got something out of this on insight on the 5 different types of thought distortions. Pass this information along. That's your task that I'm going to give you. Pass this information along, this valuable information along. Share this information with someone. Ask them, are you aware of what thought distortions are? Describe to them what thought distortions are. Then say, hey, by the way, there are 5 different types of thinking distortions we all use on the planet. But for people who got alcohol or drug addiction, their thinking distortions just are more extreme. So with that being said, I hope you all got something out of this. Simplify. Have a great evening.